I would like to respectfully acknowledge the presence of NiRA President, Mr. Deshola Akinsanya, as well as other distinguished guests and colleagues present today. Thank you for being here. So it's a known fact that Africa's internet is growing rapidly, but our security maturity is not advancing at the same space, right? So today I want to focus on moving from deployment to enforcement, especially in routing security. Can the technical please help to bring up my slides? Hello? Technical, please, my slides.
Yes, we are loading your slides. Yes, now we can see them.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, so just like I said, there is growth which is visible, but security maturity is not advancing at the pace of growth we are experiencing. Second slide, please. Okay, thank you. So you can see that we experience quite a lot of growth, right? For example, the undersea cable growth, DNSSEC adoption in various TLDs across Africa. But the fact is, despite you have more of cables, more exchange points, and more cloud infrastructure, and wider DNS adoption, many security controls remains optional. So the gap is not all about deployment, and it is in enforcement. Okay, so there is a very high stakes of connectivity, and most major disruptions are not sophisticated attacks. In fact, they can be as a result of operational mistakes, route leaks, misconfigurations, and failures that propagate across the network. So a single ASN can make a mistake and it can impact millions of users. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here is just some statistics about cybersecurity in Africa, okay? And operators now face continental scale consequences from routing failures, not limited to where the problem occurs. It propagates across the region. Now, please go to the next slide. Okay, when you look at this next slide, I don't want us to really focus our attention on the percentage, right? And the Internet Society have 4 basic metrics that they measure internet resilience, like infrastructure, market readiness, performance, and security. So each of these in percentage, but this graph is just showing where we are, where we stand globally. So what I want us to take away from this slide is not necessarily the percentage, even though we are lagging behind, okay? But the most important thing is, as we are growing, are we really growing with all of these metrics that is used to measure the resilience, right? Next slide, please. Okay, so let's look at routing security, the reality in Africa. So the reality in Africa is we have frequent incidents and we have very low validation. Beside that, most of our problems, we prefer to react to problems instead of being proactive. And what do you think can be the cause of this? Even though some operators embrace these technologies, okay, when it comes to enforcement, most people do enforce, okay? So our challenge is not all about awareness. I strongly believe most operators know about routing security, okay? We remain reactive instead of being proactive, and many networks publish ROA, but they do not validate the route. So it's like checking into a hotel, you have a lock and you refuse to leave your door open, anything can happen. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at RPKI and ROA global participation. Okay, so AFRINIC, which is responsible for the Africa and India Ocean region among the regional registries, contributes to only about 3.7% of the global ROA. Okay, so Africa participation in the global PKI ecosystem is growing, yet, but it still represents a very small portion of global ROA. More importantly, creating ROA alone does not protect the internet. It needs to be validated before we can boast of protection. Next slide, please. Okay, let's look at other protocol adoption gaps, right? IPv6, it's not all about address exhaustion. I think in Africa, our focus is always, oh, IPv4 is depleting, we need to embrace IPv6, but IPv6 is beyond that, okay? So it's also about reducing dependence on what? On aging infrastructure and preparing for future growth. So slow adoption still creates long-term operational and various security challenges. So you can see the adoption and usage of IPv4 and IPv6 in worldwide, which is the picture by the left-hand side, and the one I have by the top right-hand corner is the adoption and usage when it comes to Africa. So can we really rate ourselves as being in a good state if 4.7% of our traffic is IPv6, whereby we have 95.3% or thereabouts being IPv4? Okay, so this is what Cloudflare is reporting. Next slide, please. Let's look at some behavioral signs of IPv6. Okay, and I strongly believe there are some friction we need to reduce when it comes to deployment of IPv6. So the first thing is it possible? Why not we make this thing default instead of looking at IPv6 as something we can add on to a technology that is existing already? Okay, so most engineers, it's not as if they are not knowledgeable about IPv6, okay, but most times they prefer to do the easiest thing, okay? So beside that, if secure deployment is difficult, it's going to be very difficult for us to increase the rate at which we adopt the usage of IPv6. So we must try as much as possible to make secure configuration the default. Next slide, please. Okay, so I believe a lot of people wonder that why is it that despite this growth, this security threat persists, okay? And most time, operators fear breaking connectivity, okay? The objective is always, is the connectivity up, okay? If it is up, don't bother to like add any other thing. In some instances, operators don't even patch the operating system, powering most of the equipment. So this explains how much of resistance to ROV. And if you look at this diagram, I believe you wonder, why is it that we have quite a lot of RPK and ROA, and all of a sudden it's coming down? Is it that all these ROA are created, and when they expire, people don't care to like recreate those ROA? So those are one of the questions we need to look at and ask ourselves. Next slide, please. So what are the things that can reduce these incidents? So I feel the first thing is we need to enforce route origin validation, okay? And the answer is not as complex as we think, okay? Let's enforce route origin validation. Let's operationalize RPKI. Then continuous monitoring, and we should have like an African SOC whereby we can share incidents and learn from one another. Next slide, please. Okay, so The technical community and all other players have a lot of role to play. Okay, so operators have the greatest ability to what? To reduce risk. Okay, security should be treated the same way we treat uptime and reliability. It should not be like it's an add-on service which we may just care to either embrace or implement. So operators, we have a lot to do to be ensured that yes, we embrace all this. Next slide, please. So for network operators groups, okay, there are some things we can do. We have to try as much as possible to see the possibility of creating safe spaces to share real enforcement experiences, what broke, what didn't, so we can learn from ourselves and know how to grow. Okay, so all the players need to come together because we all have a role. Let's imagine a scenario whereby a GTLD implements DNSSEC, right? But the registrants are not willing to embrace it, or they are not willing to make use of it. Okay, so all players have a role to play, and there is no single stakeholder that can solve this alone. So I have some points here for network operators group, like having hands-on session that run standards into muscle memory and amplify success stories from local operators to accelerate adoption. For Afrinic, I think Afrinic is already doing most of the things it is supposed to do. But I strongly believe if there is possibility of having incentive for operators who enforce most of these technologies, it's going to encourage other people to embrace and implement most of these features that are available. Then Africanic can also see the possibility of improving visibility of routing security measurement. So we can all, as a community, learn from that. Next slide, please. All right. So what is the call to action? Security is not a future upgrade. It's a daily operational decision, which all of us as operators need to embrace. It's necessary for us to enforce what we already have, what we've deployed. We should make security configuration default. It should not be, oh, it's working. Later on, we are going to enforce security. Okay? So let's treat security the way we treat reliability. Okay? So I strongly believe as Africans, it's not deployment problem we have. Okay? So the problem from my own angle is enforcement problem. Okay? And like I said, security is not a future project. It's what all of us need to put our hands on deck to make sure it's something we put into consideration as we carry on our daily operations. And I want to remind all of us that if we did not enforce all of these things, what is even the point of having it? So I think that ends my presentation, and I strongly believe I've been able to make use of the 15 minutes assigned to me. So I'll be happy to use the remaining 1 minute or thereabouts to take questions if there's any. Thank you for your attention.